But the Bible says more than that, because every sin has its repercussion. And we often deceived by the evil one that is no harm, but the harm is sometimes not only on ourselves, but on our very loved one. Example, for the one who juggled, you see that his friend, he called him a friend who got burned. And often this kind of sin is that actually our loved one, the very one that we love the most, got burned as a result of this sin. And so it is violates biblical principles in the sense of what the Bible forbid. Not that God in the business of actually trying to be a person who wants to make us miserable, constantly punishes us, waiting to punish us. No. Our God is a God of love. He gave us this guideline in order for us not to fall into it and destroy ourselves and come into misery and come into suffering and pain and the consequences of it. And so he constantly and again gives us this guideline. So biblical principles are guidelines that help us so that we will not be able to suffer and the pain that is brought about by sin. It is never right to do wrong, friend. It is never right to do wrong. So biblical principles has been now watered down. People have explained. I read another interesting article. I don't know whether I am trying to find this article and try to give many friends as possible. The latest study shows that homosexuality is not to do with DNA. It is to do with actually a behavioral pattern that has gone wrong. And so no one can say, I was born a homo. So for example, then I have the right to marry, of the same sex. The scientific evidence began to point out it is actually a matter of choice. A person, it's not a matter of DNA that you're born with it. It's a matter of choice. Sometimes upbringing. Sometimes the environment can affect you. Yes, true. It's a behavioral problem that can be rectified. Don't be deceived by the evil one to think that this is something that was born that nothing can correct it because it's in your DNA. It is not. And I'm interested because that is backed by scientific evidences. The most recent article that I have seen, as a good friend downloaded in his Facebook, and there was, as I read it, it was interesting, and I thank God for that. Now, do you know that the Bible did says that God, in Proverbs chapter 5, verse 21, the Bible says, for a man's ways are in full view of the Lord's, and he examines all his path. For a man's ways are in full view of the Lord, and he examines all his path. In other words, God is watching all the time. And I like these humorous stories that I share quite often, and I love it. It's one of my favorite. And this burglar broke into the house in the midnight, at night. And it was almost pitch dark. And he was ransacking the place, and he was getting valuable item, finding valuable item, and put into the sack. And suddenly he heard this voice loudly, Jesus is watching you. And he panicked. And stopped for a while. But after that, there was nothing. And so he continued to ransack. And again this voice came, Jesus is watching you. So he quickly pointed his torchlight at the direction of the voice, and he saw a parrot. To his relief, it was just a parrot. And in the process, he said, who are you, as he panicked? And the parrot shouted out, Moses. Not our brother Moses here. Nothing to do with Moses. And he automatically shouted out, who is the weird person who will name a parrot Moses? And the parrots continue. The very same weird person who actually named the Doberman who is behind you, Jesus. So this story actually tells us that we must always be aware that we can deceive ourselves and the devil can deceive us, but God knows. God watches. God is concerned. And oftentimes we get ourselves into trouble. The second definition of being risky behavior is this, that it feeds into fleshly weaknesses. It fits the fleshly weaknesses that we have. And Proverbs 5 verse 8 says, keep to a path far from her. Do not go near the door of her house. And this is her referring to actually the personification of a prostitute of sexual misbehaving. So in the old American story that was told about the Red Indian chief, he was actually this very wise old chief, and he was gathering all the young ones who were actually going for the test and examining how to become a man in the process. And so he giving them advice. And he told them constantly within ourselves, there are two wolves that are fighting. One is a good wolf and one is a bad wolf. Some days the good wolf will win over stronger than the bad wolf. Some days the bad wolf becomes stronger and the good wolf is weaker. At the end of the story, a young brave asked At the end, who wins, the good wolves or the bad wolves? And the chief, Indian chief, explained, the one that you feed the most is the one that will win. And so the principle is the same with us. If we constantly feed ourselves to the bad wolf will have better of us, and it will destroy us. The third quick definition is this, that behavior that is risky is this, that it pushes the boundaries, living on the edge. And I know that as young generations, often, I remember when I was young too, I like to push boundaries. When someone said no, I want to do it. And so my mother played reverse psychology over with me. If he wants me to do something, he asks me not to do it, and I will do it. And if he tells me not to do it, she is sure that I will do it. Now that's the culture of us pushing ourselves to the boundaries.